Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series. If you're joining us for the very first time today and you decide to read 2 chapters a day for the next 20 months, you'll cover the entire Bible. So it's great to have you with us. And today we're reading Exodus chapter 2 and 3. Now Moses wrote this book, and it's about, the first 2 chapters anyway, is about his early life and his birth. Now, as we look at the book of Exodus, we need to realize that God is always working behind the scenes. So there's an actual story here of millions of people that are in slavery that need to be set free. But there is a greater picture that this is a typology of. The human race is in slavery, and it needs to be set free. And so as God works with his people, he's showing us a picture. He's pointing the way to a great deliverance, a great liberty that's coming through another deliverer, Jesus. And so it's mindful. It's good for us to be mindful as we read these chapters to look with gospel lenses. What does this tell us about the way God sets free? What does this tell us about the way people are in captivity? What does this tell us about God's plan for the human race? So the story is quite quaint. At the beginning, 2 Levites, which become priests in the household of Israel, don't they? The Levitical priesthood. 2 Levites get married. They have a couple of kids. But then a law gets passed that if a baby boy is born, you've got to kill him. You've got to abort him. Now, quite clearly, mom's not going to do that. So she puts this baby in a basket, chucks him in the Nile. Now, behind me here, see my dog's very keen to get through that fence. I jumped the neighbor's fence today, and I'm on a farm near a gate that leads down to a river which enters into a dam, and the cattle go down there to water themselves. Now, the story goes that Pharaoh's daughter got up in the morning, probably went down a similar road to this, down to the river to have her morning swim. And there she sees Moses, and God uses Pharaoh's daughter having a swim to deliver Moses. Moses is then raised in the household of Pharaoh. When he becomes a slightly older boy, he decides to go and check up on his people, and he sees slavery in action, hates it. It's like an indignation in him. He's obviously a strong guy, kills the Egyptian, buries him in the sand. That didn't go down well, not in Israel or with the Egyptians. So Pharaoh is hacked off, wants to kill him. Moses flees. He winds up in a place called Midian, sits at a well, and 7 daughters of a Midianite priest come down to water their flocks. And the shepherds are rather nasty, want to chase them away. Moses gets up in his indignation. He's obviously a man who fights for freedom, a strong man, and he shoves the shepherds out of the way. And the girls are so excited they take him home to meet Dad. And Dad is really happy and says, this is a suitable guy to marry one of my kids. And he gives Zipporah to him. And so he marries Zipporah, and he raises a family there in Midian. Anyway, chapter 3, God wants to get his attention. So he sets a bush on fire without actually consuming the bush. And Moses is intrigued. So he goes across, and God says, listen, I want you to be the deliverer to get your people out of Egypt. Moses protests, and he says, but Moses says to the Lord, this is verse 11 of chapter 3, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh to bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He says, like, God, I think you've got the wrong guy. I mean, don't you remember, I'm the murderer. I'm the guy the Egyptians don't want. I'm the guy that the Israelites have rejected. He's obviously a strong guy, but we learn later he can't even speak. So he protests. God will have nothing of it. Then God says to him, listen, I have a plan. And he details the plan to Moses, and he says, my people need to worship me. And that's God's plan for the human race. He wants us to worship him. He says, my people are in slavery. I need them free. And that's God's plan for the human race. When we're enslaved with sin, he wants us free. And he says they need a deliverer. They can't free themselves, which is the same for the human race. We need a deliverer. We can't free ourselves. And so while Moses was the deliverer for the Egyptians, Jesus is your deliverer. And this is what God says. He says, my people need to be let go that they can worship me. See, when you're in slavery, when you're in shackles, you're not doing what God's created you to do. God's called you to worship him. He wants you to stay free, to be free, to stay free. As we read through the book of Exodus, we're going to see incredible typology. We're going to see how God sets people free, how he works with slavery and those in slavery. And so I look forward to walking through the book of Exodus with you on this exciting journey.